Today I'm going to talk to you about Edgar Allan Poe's short story The Telltale Heart, published in 1843. The focus of this video is to introduce you to two methods of analysis, namely psychoanalytical criticism and gender criticism. My analysis will be superficial, and there are many more aspects to both readings, but as not to overwhelm you, I'll get in and out quickly. I could also have done biographical reading or historical reading, but for now let's just stick to psychoanalytical criticism and gender criticism. The story begins with an unnamed first-person narrator claiming that they are not mad, and then the narrator proceeds to argue why they're not mad even though they have killed an old man. There is a reason why I'm keeping the pronoun used to describe the narrator gender neutral, not saying him or her, to describe the narrator. First of all, we technically don't know whether the narrator is male or female, but we'll get back to this during my reading of the short story using gender criticism. You should always be alert when encountering a first-person narrator, as they might very well be unreliable. This particular narrator is definitely unreliable. It's clear to the reader that the narrator is crazy, as the killing of the old man who has done nothing to insult or hurt our narrator is not done in self-defense, and the reason given is that the old man has an evil eye, as you can see here in a quote from page 1, whereas it says in line 10, "Object there was none, passion there was none, I loved the old man, he had never wronged me, he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this." So this does not seem to be a valid reason for killing somebody. So doing a psychoanalytical or Freudian reading of the short story, we could arguably use the concept of projection. Projection means the attribution of one's own ideas, feelings, or attitudes to other people or to objects, especially the externalization of blame, guilt, or responsibility as a defense against anxiety. So basically what this means is that something where you should blame yourself, perhaps you're blaming others. So the reason why this interpretation arguably makes sense is that there's a pun with the word I, sounding exactly like I, as in the self. And therefore it can be argued that the narrators found something wrong with themselves that they are then projecting onto the old man. And you might think this is too much, and that's okay. This is just one way to interpret the reasons for killing the old man. There are other methods of analysis to choose from, as I've said earlier. As long as you can argue your case with examples from the text, there are many different methods of analysis that would be well suited for this text. This leads me to gender criticism, because it can be argued that the reason why the narrator kills the old man is because the narrator is a woman who's fed up with having to live with the male gaze. Now, the male gaze is a phrase coined by film theorist Laura Mulvey. First, let's look at what the word gaze means, because it's not just a look. According to the dictionary, to fix the eyes in a steady, intent look, often with eagerness or studious attention. So the male gaze refers to the way women are portrayed in movies, as objects of heterosexual male desire. So the film industry has always been male-dominated, and films have viewed and arguably still views women from a male's perspective. Here from Mad Men, it's a good quote from Jonathan Schroeder. To gaze implies more than to look at. It signifies a psychological relationship of power in which the gazer is superior to the object of the gaze. This is obviously problematic for several reasons. One being that we as moviegoers are trained to believe that women should look and act a certain way. Furthermore, women's roles in movies are often limited to being objects of desire and not subjects of action. If we had more time, we could go into Alison Bechdel's test, the Bechdel test, which is a measure of determining representation by women in a certain film or any sort of fiction in general. So the test, as you can see, has 3 elements. First, if you look to the right here, the first element is the film has to have at least 2 named women in it. They have to talk to each other, and they have to talk to each other about something besides a man. As you can see here in the 20s, 21% passed the Bechdel test. Now in 2010s, we're at 64, but arguably that's still pretty crummy. So try to notice whether the next film you watch will pass the Bechdel test. Anyway, I digress. Back to The Telltale Heart. As I was saying, it can be argued that the narrator of The Telltale Heart is a woman who's fed up with being an object of male desire, and she has therefore decided to kill the old man, a representation of this male gaze. The eye is the very thing she uses to explain why she needs to kill the man. She actually describes the eye like this, and this is also from page 1, where it says, "I undid it," so line 26, "just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just as midnight, but I found the eye always closed. And so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye." So it could furthermore be argued that she uses the stereotypical portrayal of women as being passive objects, and she uses this to her advantage. She's able to kill the man because she's able to be so still and so passive. And here's a quote from page 2, where the man says, "Who's there?" "I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down." Now you may once again think that this is taking literary criticism too far. I disagree. The point is not whether you agree with a certain method of analysis. The point is that you need to know that different ways of reading texts, in film and podcasts exist. And as long as you can argue your case using examples from the text, you can pretty much use any method of analysis you please. I might dislike psychoanalytical criticism and favor gender criticism, but that's neither here nor there. As academics, we have to get over ourselves and be academic in our work. And this we can do by knowing different methods of reading texts and being aware of our own preferences and biases. Because when push comes to shove, the readings we do arguably says more about the reader than the text.